Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to begin with our first post-lunch session. And before that, again, I'm going to remind, yes, we have the hashtag GrowEcom. So please keep tweeting maximum relevant tweets and you stand a chance to win some very exciting prizes. And back in our previous session, of course, we heard about the pizzas. And yes, so we're going to have a very, very interesting session in store, that's for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about how the modern consumer has become very channel agnostic, because there is both the online and the offline presence. So how is it that you can run both of them simultaneously without one of them cannibalizing the other? Now that's going to be a challenge, but it's going to be absolutely interesting to get perspectives from our speakers. Firstly, I'd like to invite on stage our session moderator, Mr. Milan, Sheth, who's a partner, advisory services and leader, ITES sector, EY India. He comes with more than 18 years of consulting experience, and that also includes comprehensive design and implementation of strategic sourcing with large number of clients in the area of IT services, BPO services, knowledge services. Our next speaker for the session is the head of e-commerce with Titan. May I please invite Mr. Alokedeep Singh on the stage. He currently manages a multi-category e-commerce business for Tanishq, Titan, Fast Track, Titan I+. And he has leadership experience across the entire digital business, including e-commerce, web marketing analytics, online sales, etc. Moving on to our next speaker, who is the head e-commerce of Domino's India. May I please invite Mr. Mayank Singh on the stage. Well, yes, sir, we were talking about the Domino's pizza specifically in the previous session. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Singh is an entrepreneur, in fact, passionate about digital products with the expertise to handle challenging situations at any stage, starting from a concept to development to release to the market, and then in also enhancing, optimizing, innovating, and strategies for business growth. That brings us to our final speaker for the session, who is the head India business with Servion Global Solutions. May I please invite Mr. Gokul Gopalakrishnan, who comes with more than 13 years of experience in the CIM domain. He joined Servion in the year 2006, and he began his professional career as a software engineer with Edge Access. While this is a post-lunch session, it definitely is not a graveyard session, which a lot of people call it. So let's have a round of applause to actually let our panel members know that we are totally enthused about it. And with that, I'm going to hand over the proceedings to our session moderator, Mr. Milan Sheth. Over to you, sir.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Difficult session post-lunch. We'll try and make sure that we keep you guys engaged. So that's the ask for all four of us. So thank you very much of all of us here, and thank you all the panelists to be here. What I'll do is that probably spend a couple of minutes just asking a few questions, and then maybe just the one number which probably you might have heard, but US we consider as the most developed e-commerce market or e-tailing market. What do you think is the percentage of total retail volume which goes to the e-tailing as a channel? So I'll give you two options. Is it more than 50%? Is it between 25 and 50%? Or is it below 25%? Below 25? Okay. Right, so we'll just park that. I'll just have probably a second question. Who do you think, and I'm just taking UK as a market, if just as an representative example. In the UK market, between an offline retailer and an online retailer, so, and I'm just taking a name like, you know, Sainsbury or John Lewis, what do you think is the percentage of offline people doing online sale? Are they higher than the offline people or online people doing higher sales? Let me just, again, make it simpler. John Lewis gets 15% of the total revenue from online channel. Is that revenue bigger than the pure online competitor? Just any guesses, you know? You can say yes or no, or maybe. Hopefully the question is clear. So I'm just going to ask the question again, that John Lewis reports online revenue or the goods sold online, and the volume of that, and if I really combine all the four retailers in the UK, is their volume higher or lower than the online player itself, pure online players? Higher, yeah. So I think the offline guys have a higher online volume than the pure online guys having online volume. So I think those were the kind of two data points I thought I'll just start with. And then the last point, probably, and it may differ a bit from China to India, but I thought it again important to highlight. In China, the data in 2014 showed that for various categories, bulk of the consumers, especially in electronics, in retail, retail products or industrialized products, they did what they called as a showrooming, where they first looked at the goods in the showroom and then they eventually went and did a purchase online. But that's the trend which is absolutely reverse in a country like Korea. So I'd like to kind of discuss that in India. Is showrooming or reverse showrooming what is more prevalent? So I think with those three data points, let me kind of jump into the debate right away. Two of my panelists have who have been what I would call as a traditional offline players who have gone online. Titan company for last 3 years and Domino's probably for similar period of time. And then we have Gokul, who's essentially enables offline companies to go online. And when I say online, it's not just through a web-based presence, but even in terms of a contact center or chat and so on and so forth. So probably my first question, given the the kind of data points I raised, Alok, to you, is in terms of when you look at Titan company and when if you can just take us back to that first time you thought about moving online, what was the primary driver from your perspective? Reaching out to unserved customers, or is it a completely new set of customers?
I think the primary driver was digital as a medium. If you kind of, the same countries that you've spoken about, the US and the UK, and the trend is fast changing as well for India. More than 60, 65, I mean, these are just numbers. Percentages of customers today evolve. As in, customers use digital as a medium today to really check out a product before they buy. So for a company which has, I would say, a far large number of market leader brands in respective categories, Tanishq, Fast Track, Titan, I mean, these are brands which cut across different categories. It is the obvious, and it was the obvious when we started the whole journey on e-commerce, and especially keeping in mind that today, even if for a lot of categories of products are there where people want touch and feel, but at the first reaction when you see a large hoarding ad, we're a company which does a lot of outdoor advertising, is that the first reaction is you want to see what the product looks like on your, whether it's on your handheld or your desktop screen or on your laptop for that matter. Or if you're watching television, you view a commercial. Some of the Tanishq commercials have been really blockbusters in recent times. The first reaction is you want to go and see what's that product that bride is wearing, or what's the product that that girl is gifting to her, I mean, she's been gifted by her father, etc. So that's the entire means, or I would say that's the entire justification for a brand's company like us to create a separate e-commerce entity, to create an e-commerce vertical. Well, obviously e-commerce stands for sales, but we also, I think, are major influencers of sale for our products that happen in the store as well.
Okay. Maybe, Mayank, I think just if I can pick up that with Domino's and food being a very different impulse kind of a purchase. What's been your journey like from moving customers who visit your stores to incentivizing them to go online? And what was, again, like I asked Alok, what was your trigger to go online?
Yes, so we were very much early in e-commerce India, wherein in 2009 when we started food ordering for Domino's in India, and it was not just that it was very new at that particular time, and we were seeing the market outside India, wherein like US, Japan, Korea, wherein the things were going pretty good for them, and that was the time when Domino's decided let's have a Domino's ordering in online ordering in India also. And it's because it's typically an impulse buying. So you are hungry right now, so you would want to consume it right away. You would not wait for next 2-3 days to consume it. So when it comes to that, so it's about, so we had these two sections into it, which is one is dining business and the other is a delivery business. And when it comes to delivery, you would either call or probably you would try some other mechanism like maybe going to store and then pick it up from there. So this was actually a bridge which was making between the consumers and the Domino's, wherein when Domino's saw from that perspective, the people were there and we started the online ordering process and we gave them the complete menu thing online. So when you do a call, so you are not able to see a menu, you are not pretty, so there are a lot of challenges in terms of you placing an order. So that was actually an advantage for a customer also, when he was able to see a menu, he was able to see what he's ordering for, and then probably he can see the right kind of billing which is happening. And that became an advantage for a customer, and that's how they started using it. So when it comes to your second question, which was about the incentivizing of the customer, so we started with a lot of programs wherein, like buy one get one is one of our successful programs, wherein we were running buy one get one only online so that we can bring more and more consumers to online. And that was again because of the study which we were seeing that our online customers were more profitable in terms of when they were ordering online, they were able to see, so their ticket size was increasing, their frequency was increasing because of the convenience which was being added to the system. So that's how the journey started. And then later on we were able to see that the incentivization is not the only thing which actually works on. So we were able to see what is the kind of users who are actually consuming the pizzas online. And then what we did was, because we had a lot of bigger data on the offline side, so what we did was we started creating a profile of those customers and started tapping it to the offline world. And then we were able to find out which is the right customer to pitch in to convert him online. And that's how we started incentivizing to the right kind of audience so that we can bring him online.
All right, so I think, Gokul, let me bring you here is, both of them talked about their triggers for getting online, going digital. In your experience as you work with some of the global players, where does the cost to serve, play in this? Does offline going online, increase your cost to serve in a short term, but in a longer term, does it give you a better profit margin? And probably on that, if you can also talk that, does it vary from category to category, or is it a universal truth, or is there a category specific nuances?
Sure, but before I answer that question, true story, my wife and kid, 6 years old, absolutely cares nothing about what I do professionally in life. They don't even know what I do. But today I told them I'm going to be sitting with a senior person from Tanishq and a senior person from Domino's, and for the first time they gave me absolute respect in my house. So thanks for that. Absolutely. so this is my only claim to fame in my house now is that I sit next to a person from Tanishq and Domino's. So thanks for that. Now to your question, Milan. So there are a couple of things, right? So I took over this role as head of India business a couple of months ago. Before that, I was in the US leading the sales for Servion, and as part of that, I used to work very closely with retailers like Target, Walmart, etc. Right? Now, this is a very interesting conversation on online versus offline, whereas what the retailers there are typically doing is a very, very efficient hybrid model. And I'll give you an example of what they're trying to do there, right? So there is a price, let's say that you want to buy a TV in store. You walk into a store, let's say that TV is $500, all right? The same TV, when you buy it online and have it shipped to your house, is $450. But they say you can buy it online, but the third option they give it, ship to store. The store that's very close to your house, which is, let's say, 2 miles away, and you have a Target or Walmart always 2 miles. Whether you find a hospital 2 miles in the radius, you will not, but you'll always find a Walmart or a Target in a 2-mile radius. So they give you the third option of shipping to a store at $425, which means now as a customer, you've already got your price advantage, which is what has been driving this online market more than an offline market in general. But now you have got a hybrid model where the customer has got the benefit of that $425, the $75 saving, but now he's in the store. The minute he's in the store, the trends have shown that a customer tends to have things in a shopping cart online and walk away from this, close the page, not buy anything. But when they go to a store, they will buy something from that store other than this $425. So there will be an uplift of $150. They'll probably buy milk, cereal, whatever that store is selling, which will make up for the discounts that they're getting from an online to offline model. Now what they're also doing is that's an online driving an offline sale, right? But there is also an offline driving an online sale. So, so when you go into a Target or a Walmart today, it's all Wi-Fi enabled. So you get free Wi-Fi, and people like me usually log on to their Wi-Fi almost immediately. But what they're also doing is they're actually tracking using your phone which aisle you are actually on in that store. So let's say that you are in the toy aisle, where for a let's say a boy's toy aisle or whatever, they actually send you a text that says, here is something that you can buy right here in this aisle, or here is the price you can buy it online for. So you see, the first example of the TV was an on-site medium driving an off-site sale, but here you are already on-site, that's also driving an off-site sale. So the technologies they are using absolutely to track where you are, what your buying patterns are, etc., to drive both these are something we are typically seeing in those countries.
Intrusion on privacy is a separate topic, so I'll not talk about that. But just coming back to my question and just kind of staying on that, on the cost to serve, and you gave a very interesting examples. For each of the channel cost to serve, do you think the cost to serve increases for an offline in a short to medium term, or it really doesn't? It doesn't.
I think again, depending on what kind of vertical you are on. I mean, there might be for a food vertical like Domino's, it could be very different from, let's say, electronics, etc. And I believe at in some sense certain pieces, I would believe that there are food especially would probably be cheaper online than an offline, but that necessarily need not be the case for electronics or buying a car. You'll never buy a car online, but I'm just saying, like example, there are things like manufacturing certain parts, etc., which are much more cheaper online. And I think you were giving us an example before on how you assume by default that online is always cheaper than offline, but that's necessarily not always the case. There are specific regions, taxations, etc., where online could be much more expensive than.
I think the days of assumption, you assume that we'll never buy a car online. I never imagined 10 years back that nobody will buy a house online. So people are buying houses online. I'm assuming one day car also will be bought online. But Alok, let me bring you on a point which Gokul made, and he said that you actually get online customers to get offline and kind of incite them to do more purchases. Do you see in your strategy on a go-forward basis that you would want online to come offline at all? And if yes, what would be the purpose they'll serve?
Yeah, so I think as one of the large retailing companies, and especially the other retailing companies, we stand poised to really benefit from this whole juggernaut called e-commerce that is kind of been created. Well, yes, obviously there are biggies who've had the large first mover advantage, but the fact that the Indian market is so much like the US, people are brand savvy, people are brand conscious, people like brands, depending upon whichever strata or element of the society that they are. So while we may call it Omni Channel as a complicated, fashionable term, like in the morning somebody was saying big data is a fashionable term, I would say Omni Channel is an equally fashionable term today to use in our circles. At the same time, I wouldn't call it Omni Channel, I would call it probably creating engaging experiences for customers, both online, offline, and there are sufficient use cases. Pick up from store is one of them. I would say in our case, in our category, especially jewelry, the DIY thing is where probably is a phenomenal thing. If you allow the customer today to kind of personalize his own jewelry online, because today people like designs, they want to do things on their own, and give him the option tomorrow to collect that jewelry piece through a store where the last minute inkling or all that can be done. So that's another use case. Similarly, for other brands, like we also sell eyewear, sufficiently large eyewear, prescription eyewear through our portal. The fact that Titan Eye Plus also has a large footfall across the country there are various combinations that we are exploring, which in the future, I think as a retailer, that's a core strength that I would say all retailers can leverage versus an aggregator. So we may not today as an e-commerce business unit be doing numbers equivalent to probably a big billion day, etc. But futuristically speaking, our relationships are going to be more stronger with the customer and not completely transactional in nature.
Right.
So that's
So I think,
yeah.
let me just stay on this thing, Alok. Is it, I mean, one would assume first 3 years, if you look at India, and many of us in this room probably believe that this will not happen. We will not buy all categories online. It has happened. The question which puzzles me is that for every online company or online product category, there are 50 offline players. How come all of them are not online? Is it to do with mindset of the people who run those organizations? Is it or is it that they think that this is just a fad? I mean, and both of you started several years back, but what's your sense on a larger, is there a comment on an industry? I mean, if I kind of took you're part of the larger Tata Group, and Tata Group has announced their foray to get into, digital commerce in a big way. Is it a mindset related one, or is it that people think it will just last for some time and then once the venture money will get over, we'll go back to the normal offline model?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of mindset, inertia, and the fact that people probably perceive that this requires a lot of capital and cash burn. What probably people discount the fact is, if you go to Google, and we extensively work with all the industry, I would say, bodies in the ecosystem, customers today, yes, in India are searching on price, but the prefix to the price is their own brand which is sitting there. So it's a whole lot of opportunity for them to reach out to the customer through their own digital mediums, while giving the customer all the possible options. Today you cannot say that the customer will only buy from my store, he will only buy from my e-commerce website, he will not buy from a third-party marketplace. You need to give the customer all possible options today, because I'm sure nobody in this room can predict where e-commerce as an industry will be from 3 years from now. Whether there will be the top 5 still existing, whether there will be top 3. So this model isn't something which is to be, I would say, driven like a strategy in a normal business, where people kind of build 5-year business plans and then kind of just stick to them.
Yeah.
This business is about kind of reviewing your strategy, reviewing your business plan every month, reviewing your costs, reviewing your ROI, which is what we do at least, maintaining the perfect mix of a corporate business. Yes, we are a corporate business, we have a P&L, we do not have cash to burn. But at the same time, we obviously add consumer delights to the fact that the customer, why else would he shop with us?
Yeah. Okay, so I think, Gokul, I want to bring you on this point because, as I said, that for every company which has gone online, or every 2 companies which have gone online, there are probably 48 others who haven't gone online. As you enable some of these companies, what's been your experience as survey on that? Why are people, is it a wait and watch? Is it inertia, as Alok highlighted? What is it?
It's, to be very upfront, a very bad decision. That's what it is. Because I think whatever said and done, the way of our life has changed, and we are not going back. Any company that is not going to adopt an online strategy in tandem with this offline strategy is not going to survive 2 years, 3 years down the line. I mean, you're talking about a generation, current generation, which is probably had an offline experience and now are going into the online experience. The next future generations, it's going to be purely the ones who have been engaged only with the online experience and have not even an iota of what has to happen on an offline experience. I don't think for a minute my son is ever going to step into a bank branch ever. I don't think he's ever going to do that. Whereas we come from a generation, we probably are that transition generation which has done that from offline to online. So to answer in a very blunt way, those that are not going to have an online strategy will cease to exist a few years down the line. So the reason why they are probably not doing it is probably short-sightedness is the only answer I can think of.
Okay. So, Mayank, I think, looks like that this is the way to go, and you guys are already on that path. Can you just tell us, you referred somewhere in your earlier comment around the information and data which you get from online, which you used to do offline, and that information allows you to serve better. At Domino's, how do you think, or can you predict at least for 3 years, how would this online-offline interaction would look like in terms of where the volumes will come from, where you will introduce new products, and where do you believe that your customer grievances, if there are any, if you can just address the entire life cycle between online and offline.
Sure. So basically, it actually depends upon category to category. So every category is different. So, and a food category might not be similar to a purely retail electronics category. So, but when one would think from a perspective of what a retailer is looking for today, he is looking for customers' data, and not just a simple data which recognizes the customer, but also the behavioral data of the customer, and which everyone wants to capture. And then it comes to the second part which is about adding convenience to the whole ecosystem, wherein the consumers have those convenience to start easily doing engagement or buying with your brand. The third thing which comes is about the connect, and which again leads to loyalty. So these three things, when you would club, then what a retailer would start getting would be a better perception from a customer perspective for a brand. He would have an enhanced optimization, or I would say a productivity in terms of the cost effectiveness, because so when you would add convenience to something, so you would also have some productivity at your end. So suppose if I have to give you an example of Domino's, so I have those, so a customer buying online would also limit the calls which are coming to restaurants. So the restaurant order taker can probably serve more customers at the restaurant itself, or probably he would do a lot of other stuff which a restaurant requires. And then then you would also get more places to basically do business and generate sales, which is the third point. So these are the advantages which you will start getting once you complete the life cycle of getting the consumer data. And the data becomes very important from my attribute point of perspective, because today, like Domino's we value our data, and probably we have created those kind of models, and we have created those segments into our data, wherein we are able to identify which kind of customer is the right time for him to buy, probably. So a lot of predictions which we have to start doing it, and to do all those kind of predictions, you cannot have those kind of data just from an offline world, because it would be just a recognition of either a transaction or probably your identification. But once it comes to mobile or online, you would also have the kind of behavior he is showing onto the, so basically if I have to talk about web, so probably you would know from which last website he came to a Domino's world, or which all, so at what interval he has come in. So suppose offline data would not have an unsuccessful transaction, but an online would have. So I would know that how many times he has attempted to my site, and he is more likely to do a transaction he has not done. So probably I can make a better strategy in capturing him. So that's
okay. So I think we've heard so far all the good steps which you have taken. What are the challenges you face online? I mean, we touched on the inertia and the mindset, but Alok, probably a question to you, as you've been running this for now 3 years. Whether from inventory management, dedicated inventory management, customer grievances, engagement, are there obvious challenges offline companies face when they go online, or is it a very smooth kind of a ride?
It's obviously not smooth. It's obviously not smooth. I think it's been a tough run. I think at least for the first 12, 18, it continues to be. So because typically a retailer, we are not a technology company, and we don't have, I would say, a large workforce of developers, etc. So obviously the technology piece, getting it right, is the toughest piece, I think, in the first few months or the first year or so. And going forward, obviously, we do not have the luxury of having venture capitalist funding. So the CFO is obviously breathing down your neck for every dollar or every dime that is kind of given to you for spending on whether customer acquisition or anything else for that matter. Similarly, one needs, so for a vertical business, and this is so very characteristic of all the other verticals within even pure play e-commerce, you do not have the luxury of your own logistics provider. So you're dependent upon third parties, which again come with their own set of issues, and because you do not have a control over the last mile. You're handing over something as precious as a piece of jewelry worth some 60, 70,000 bucks. We also ship internationally, which is where shipments go upwards of about $1,000, $1,500 to US, so far-flung locations. Till the time the shipment is delivered as far as the US or even, I would say, within the country, the whole cycle needs to perform, because the customer on the other side has the same set of expectations from you what he has from a large pure play e-tailer. He really doesn't care less. So he doesn't actually care about the fact that you're a small setup versus a big setup. The fact that you put up your shop there on the www to sell, he expects his order to be with him the next day. He expects the same experience while shopping online. He expects the same kind of offers. So it's a tough journey. But where I think retailers themselves can, and some of the points I think which Mayank was talking about in terms of data. So today, by virtue of being a company which is 27, 28 years old, we actually have a lot of customer data. We have an in-house loyalty program which has close to about 6 million active users. And the fact that we have some 10 brands that we sell online gives us kind of a lot of cross-pollination into data, while some of them are entirely different target audiences. At the same time, we leverage whatever we can leverage within the company. So I start off all my internal presentations by saying that we're a bootstrap startup within this large corporate. So, and we don't shy. So that's the message which goes downwards from my, in terms of whatever little hierarchy that I have in my team, is that don't shy from asking somebody an extra thing. So whether it's supply chain, whether it's logistics, whether it's space for the warehouse. So everything at a very, very initial stage was built out of, I would say, by borrow, beg, not exactly stealing. So, but then that's the way startups start, right? So the only difference is, yes, we are a corporate, so you know your salaries at the end of the month are assured. But then of course you need to deliver at the same pace as what a pure play e-tailer is delivering, at the same growth rate. And I was having a chat with somebody in the morning. Given the fact that last 2 years we've come out of the woods, so the expectations are even rising. So why can't we grow at like 300%? Why can't we grow at like 500%? Commerce is growing at that rate. So there are challenges, there are strengths. It's up to, I would say, anybody taking that journey to move along with both of them and see what works best.
So I think, we touched a bit on different product categories. Gokul, any perspective you can share on the services? I think you referred to banks earlier, a few minutes back. But do you see that, financial services, insurance products, and a lot of the services where Omni Channel is, or a distribution, as in the language they call it as, is distribution makes important for them to be necessarily omnichannel?
Absolutely. And just taking a step back, right? So when we have this discussion, when we have been having this discussion on online and offline, the mode of retailing, it's essentially on the buying side of it, right? So when and Shankaran today morning, I don't know how many of you are present, talked about the 4 levels or layers of the life cycle of a customer experience itself. One is the research, what's being done to buy a product, the actual product buying itself. The third one is the delivery mechanism to deliver that product, and the final one is post-sale, the service. So when you look at it, the online versus offline across these 4 categories, you can clearly see that the researching thing is done primarily online. You don't see people going to 4 stores today to check pricing. They don't do that. So that is predominantly online. The buying cycle is what we are discussing, online, offline, the verdict is still out there. Delivery, same thing. On the 4th piece, of course, which is the customer service piece of it, the post-sale, that's where Servion plays a majority of our engagements is in that 4th cycle. We find that the channel with which the customers are reaching out are still traditional voice channels. It still remains that when we talk about omni-channel, and Alok rightly put it, it's a great term. It obviously is a very all-encompassing term, but the fact remains that 80% of transaction that reaches out to a contact center today are primarily voice channels. You have email, you have chat, you have social media, you have a mobile as a channel today, but still that's only 20%. Now, of that 80% of calls that come into a contact center, majority of them are grievance calls. You rarely see people calling in to have a transaction, all right? The transactions are usually done online itself, whereas grievances are always offline. Very rarely do we see grievances on an email or on a chat. They want to talk to people. So more than what segment it is, I would say the services behavior is dependent on what kind of a call it is. If it's a transactional, if it is a query related transaction, then it's all done online or through an IVR, which is also in some sense online because it's self-service, etc. But if it's a grievance call, it absolutely goes to an offline channel, which is a white channel.
Right. Mayank, I think you've had a history in Domino's for running it. Do you see, if I'm at the store and if I don't like something, I can go and tell the unit manager or the shop manager. How does that behavior in online, and how do you kind of ensure that it gets closed satisfactorily to the consumer's requirement? Is there a behavior different, very similar, or?
No, so we do get a lot of concerns. So I mean, if we are into service, so definitely someone would have some kind of problems with while that probably a delivery was late, or probably he's still waiting for the pizza to come, or probably he's waiting eagerly for a refund to happen. So, and we understood, I mean, again we have to, so it cannot just be that everyone starts calling up and there has to be a process, and then we thought of creation of those processes. So, and that process has to be a single process. It cannot be a different process for an offline or an online or a mobile kind of transaction you do. So if supposingly I have to, but then, so the concerns will still keep coming, and you need to have a central system. So like in our case, there is a talk to us section, which is available both, which is a central system wherein you can go through a web interface and probably log your concern, or probably you can call on 6888 and then you can say that I have a concern, and that can be captured, and then again it will go back to the same system. And from that system it would go to the respective restaurant, and the GDM, which is the guest delight manager, which is the store manager, restaurant manager. He would actually have to answer those concerns, and again he need to call back to the customer, resolve the customer. Our Domino's says that we have to 100% satisfy our customers. That's our motto. So do whatever to satisfy our customer. So when it starts happening, so there is again a tracking mechanism wherein again after a closure of call from the restaurant guys, it goes a mailer to a customer, and probably a feedback call also come to the guests asking about how was his interaction with the overall system, whether the concern was resolved or not. And if it does not, then again he may say yes or no, and again it goes for an escalation. So that's how it's being captured and being monitored. But then I would say from a business perspective, one should start looking from a perspective to reduce those concerns. So like I would give you an example of a refund is a bigger problem when you're dealing online. So especially in our case, if he's hungry, he wants to pay, and the payment happened, but then somehow it was not updated to the system that the payment has been done, and he gets an SMS that the payment was rejected. So he would be in a position to whether not try or not to try. So those kind of trust and credibility is something which needs to be bring into the system, and and avoid those concerns also. So what you need to do is you need to have a 3C kind of strategy around it, which is you need to have more of correction into the system, more of communication. So give a communication to your customer at every stage. So suppose a transaction failed, a SMS goes, a refund initiated, SMS goes, a refund has happened, and the amount has been deducted from the Domino's account, a transaction update goes to the customer. So when these, and probably the last is that it should be convenient to the customer. So more you would answer, the concerns would start reducing, and when we opted this, So our refund related closures were came much lower when we implemented this particular piece, and that's how we started targeting to it. So we have this. So what we do at the back end is we check on a weekly basis, which is the larger concern, and then probably our action has to be planned accordingly.
So I think one of the things which all of us as consumers find is that just the sheer power we have in case of a grievance. There have been instances where if a telecom operator has not done something, a customer has gone social media and gone online, and it has created a kind of a brand management related concern. So I think a question probably, Alok, to you is that this reputation management or does offline retailers worry about that it's no longer a localized customer complaint or a issue, but it is kind of out in the open, and so how do you kind of manage and how do you train your people around that?
So I'll like to kind of again take a step back here. I used to be in banking earlier, so I've worked with probably the largest private sector bank in the country. So in terms of especially grievance handling, customer service, touch points, etc., I think banking, where retail really stands to learn, and this holds agnostic of whether physical retail or e-retail, has to really learn from what banking has at least achieved in this country. So in terms of being able to classify customer to a unique ID, to transaction IDs, to being able to get him to reach out to you through a singular point and having multiple nodes to that singular point. So that's the vision. While at our end today we have customer cells I would say at a divisional level, which handle these queries. Queries are or complaints for that matter are aggregated and brought into the customer cell and responded back. Now the challenge that is that we have brands which are very, very diverse. So on one side you have Tanishq and one side you have Sonata. So the kind of complaints, queries are very, very different. So you can't have a generalist back office for a person to handle if somebody is wanting to ask about a particular feature on a gold jewelry or a diamond jewelry or a pendant. So what you need here is specialists. So obviously we have specialists for each product vertical, each product division, which handle queries, and of course there's a complaint and redressal mechanism. One thing which we really take pride today is that I would say we're a fairly large now vertical e-commerce business. Our returns today are below 5%, and they've stayed that way despite us growing almost 3x every year. That's one number that is non-negotiable with my team, at least from my side. So which keeps the momentum high. While obviously if you're serving a customer, there is bound to be an instance that he would get grievanced at a certain point of time.
Right. Okay, so I think probably I'll love to get audience participate, but just maybe before we get audience to ask questions, Gokul, just one question from you. As you've seen, US and more developed market and Indian market, in lot many places we say that we leapfrog technology in India because of compared to some of the developed worlds. Do you see even in some of the models way this entire offline online will evolve, do you see a possibility that India will be ahead?
We are already ahead. I think adoption of mobile technology is way more here in India than you can see anywhere else in the world. I could definitely compare to the US. Mobile as a channel is way more advanced here, way more used way more than any other channel anywhere else in the world. So absolutely. But I do want to make add to Alok's point on customer service, right? So the complaints that you talk about, right, versus when do customers complain about a certain thing, whether they take it up on any channel, whether it could be on social media or whatever, whichever channel it is. What we are seeing is it's not so much the actual action or what the failure of the enterprise itself is that causes people to complain about. It is actually when they expect a certain thing from a brand and then their experience is different and that difference is quite huge, that's when they go and complain. let me give you an example, right? In the airline industry today, Jet Airways is a premier brand when compared to, let's say, a Go Air or an Indigo or whatever. When a Jet Airways makes a mistake and an Indigo makes a mistake, the people magnify the mistake of a Jet Airways, the same one, their experience, because you expect Jet Airways to do a certain thing, and your expectation is much more than what that experience itself is. So what really defines is, what is the difference between that expectation and experience? If it is large, people tend to complain. If it is small, so there might be a lot of occasions where a Go Air might have done something more terrible than Jet Airways, but people don't complain because they know that it is a low ticket, low fare airline, so they probably don't expect only that much. So to your point, people complain more whatever channel it is when that expectation is much more with a certain organization. So for example, I'm sure, and I can go completely by my experience, Tanishq or Domino's, I expect more than anybody else. I wouldn't, if it's a Joy Lucas or something, a brand here, I wouldn't expect anything else. But Tanishq, a Titan, a Tata company, I would expect certain standards, and that's why you see people, which is actually a good thing, because your expectation of an organization, of a brand, is much more. So it's actually good that people do complain about those things.
Yeah, Indigo won't like to be called as non-premier.
I'm sure they would like to be called that, but
and by the way, they are the only profitable airline in the country. So, nevertheless, I think this is a we want to spend more time answering queries or comments you might have. So my request will be if you can just introduce yourself and have a specific question addressed to any panelist. Yeah, so maybe gentlemen there.
sorry, I can't hear you.
So we can't hear you clearly.
Hi, Gokul, you spoke about Walmart in the US. So Walmart's present in India with exactly the same Omni Channel approach. And some of the stuff that was covered in the panel, extremely true. We've just done an all India rollout of an Omni Channel e-commerce experience for customers in India for Walmart. And it is quite a tedious journey versus saying that I want to set up one warehouse, have hundreds of products and just courier them across the country. It's taken us over a year to actually roll out, because each store is therefore a warehouse, and therefore each store associate has to be trained on how he has to fulfill an online order versus how he has to service a customer when he's walking into the store premises. And for you to do it really efficiently, which means you're really doubling up on capacity of the same store serving online as well as physical customers, the journey is very, very slow and time consuming. But from a strategic cost advantage perspective, the benefit that we can offer to a customer in an environment like this is significantly more than what a pure play e-commerce player can offer from a sheer system cost perspective. I may get free delivery on Amazon and Flipkart, but there is a system cost to the free delivery. Somebody is bearing that cost, whether it's the merchant on the marketplace or it's the marketplace owner, but there is a system cost. And from a system cost perspective, an omni-channel experience significantly reduces the overall cost in the transaction. And yeah, that's where pricing advantage can come in.
Okay, thank you for the Walmart experience in India. Gentlemen.
Good evening. By the time the mic
Yeah, sure.
gets sorted,
Please.
possibly I'll just throw the question. I'm Karan Kumar. I lead the corporate marketing for American Express. And I'll just build a thought on Gokul's point. He was mentioning something on the experiential part, right? Experiences part. And this question is a tag question both to Mayank and Alok. Typically what happens is when you move a consumer from a typical traditional set of an offline then to an online world, you tend to lose the experiential part. So I'll give my own example. There was a time when I loved walking into a Domino's store, seeing how the dough was kneaded, the entire toppings, the entire experience part of it, right? We kind of grew up with the entire thing. Same is the case with a Titan eyewear or a Tanishq, that when you enter the store, you get that entire experience being created, which is very, very tough to move on an online space. So as a strategy, as a thinking pointer of sort, are there some kind of ring fencing that you are doing to ensure that the offline part is also safe, right? Because at the end of the day, that's where the journey started. So it's good to have that entire distribution network. It's good to tap in more consumer and get a footfall into the non-tapped market. So are there some things from a category perspective, industry perspective, right from a Titan to a Domino's, very different categories, where the offline part also is a part of the strategy, or is it something which becomes like a hub and spoke model of sort, like Domino's has 5 warehouses maybe in Delhi, catering only to the online demand, and the pizzas or the food being just shipped, right? And less and less number of consumers walking into the store, and I think likewise for Alok also. So it's more of a curiosity question than just a strategy part to it. Thank
Offline
you.
less important?
No, not at all. So for us it is not at all, because the dining business has to be there, and so has to be delivery. So when we talk about whether going offline or online, or probably, so it's basically part of strategy of one company would think of, but it will never cannibalize. So we cannot see from a perspective of the sales or the consumer being cannibalized on 2 different channels, because you need to look from a customer's perspective, what is his likeness towards. So if he is not, so if he's a millennial, so millennium customer, so he would probably think of going online. Then a person like you has been suggesting that he was a person likeness towards the Domino's restaurant, he would still like to visit that. So from a retailer perspective, both would exist. One should invest on both the things, because it is about the convenience you are trying to provide to a customer and the kind of customer you are looking into.
So in our case, if you kind of look at what we do today, so we have, especially in the brick and mortar space, we have World of Titans, we have exclusive fast track brand stores, exclusive Tanishq stores, eyewear. So there's a company owned store, there's a franchisee store. Similarly, we also sell through large formats, the Shopper Stops and the others of the world. So that same piece is so very similar online. So we sell through our own e-commerce portal. As in, the strategy is little different when we sell through the marketplaces when it comes to the product mix, and maybe certain brands which we choose not to position in the marketplace. But that's more for commercial reasons. So in going forward, I don't see these two moving completely independent and agnostic as they stay today. Maybe today there is a certain amount of cannibalization happening between both of them. Maybe it's happening, yes, for sure, because of the pricing difference, etc. But post this whole pricing as a means to acquisition, which is slowly withering out as what we can see, and maybe withers out pretty much soon, good for all of us at least, you will see a fair large amount of collaboration, which is where people will call it omni, or people may call it as in shop online and pick up offline, shop in store. So which is where not only us, most retailers are moving towards. And also with the growing cost of real estate, yes, experience is important for a customer, but at the same time it's important for the store to be profitable also. The amount of square feet space that is becoming, the cost is really rising. So slowly you will see stores developing into experience centers with a limited amount of fast moving inventory. And the rest of it is in form of devices, in form of various other form factors which you can experience within the store, which is technically you're ordering it online within the store and it's being shipped to your house, or you're picking it up at a location closer to you. So those are the various things that will happen in the future. It's inevitable, because if retailers have to exist tomorrow, that has to happen. Otherwise, there are companies like Kodak, we've seen what happened to them.
To add more to it, so I just saw a fashion apparel brand wherein when you enter to their store, and if you are not able to find the right size, so they have also a kiosk wherein you can update you with your size, and probably the product would be delivered to your home. So it's basically both. So it's good for both the ways.
And Alok used the perfect word for that. The off-site channels are the experience centers. I think that's the key there. And this is not something new, right? 20 years ago, when with the advent of DVD technologies, Blu-ray, etc., people thought that every industry experts thought that people going to movies in cine theaters will go down because they have the ease of use of sitting in their home watching movies. So what did the movie directors or producers do? They innovated so much on the technology of movies itself that people knew that for the experience you had to go watch a movie. You would want to watch an Independence Day on the big theater, not on your home screen, however huge it is, right? So that's the experience center, and you got to you got to innovate on your offsite, your brick and mortar piece, and that's why you see malls now coming up with play areas, kid areas, you have your food courts. That's all part of the experience itself. It's not really so much the price. If you're going to be competing on price, then there might just be another channel that comes up 20 years later that will even destroy the current channel. But I think it's the experience which will keep the brick and mortar alive, and it is doing that. They're already innovating to ensure that such a thing happens.
Hi. Hi, I am Siddharth. I am a founder at InviteReferrals.com, which is a customer engagement software for mobile application and web apps. My question is to Mayank and Alok. Since it's easy to attribute sales on online medium or on web mobile applications, how do you run Omni channels where you might need to also attribute sales offline? Have you been able to solve this problem, or how are you dealing with that?
It depends upon, again, I mean, it's not that easy, but then again you need to find out ways to do it. So suppose if I have to give you an example, you are running a campaign with an SMS activity, and probably then you are aware of the kind of model on which you have invested in, and then probably you can next day correlate with what has actually happened on the offline and what has worked on online. So then in that terms you can actually relate whether targeting that customer was fruitful while offline, and whether by by targeting him offline and he was doing a transaction online. So you can see from a data perspective. Again, then you see from you need to attribute from a campaign period. So suppose if it's a TV ad which is going on, so probably then you would see what is the increase which has happened and how many new customer which has came into your system because of that. So then you attribute that sales to those campaigns.
But it's not point-to-point attribution.
It's not that.
Yeah, so point-to-point, obviously, that's a vision. It's pretty much not there, but I think it's fairly measurable today in terms of the above the line that we do. Even for so recent as the last week, we have Titan, which is right now running on a major activation. So you can actually measure it through the print ad, or if you're doing a radio ad or even a television ad. And when you do it targeting specific geographies, you're able to measure it at least for the online channel because of the various analytic solutions available. In terms of having a wholesome piece today to measure the performance at an omni level, I think that is where again retail as an industry needs to really learn from banking as an industry, which is fairly learned the whole art of being able to measure, at least in India, to a large extent. Retail, I don't think today any retailer is able to purely measure his conversions across channels for the media that he's doing.
Okay, so I think, thanks Alok, sorry to cut you in, but we are running out of the time, so maybe probably if I can request last two questions, gentlemen there, and then and I'll request rest of them to kind of connect offline. I've already got a signal from them, so yeah, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Amit. I'm from Vantage Circle. We run a loyalty program of verified consumers. So in fact, I just want to share, we actually sold a car through our platform. It was a Tata Nano. My question is, I just wanted to check, we've spent a lot of time on B2C customers. How is it on the B2B front? Maybe Milan or Gokul could help me out. How is it the offline and the online bit? I mean, hardware sales, say for example, procurement. I don't know whether it is part of this discussion or not. Just wanted to check on.
So I think we wanted to talk about that, but then there was an interesting topic. I think on B2B sale, we certainly see in services, whether it's professional services, legal services, architecture services, and where you essentially have another enterprise buying it. I think there the digital has been much faster adoption because they could really see a significant number of I would say benefits in a very short period of time. The only challenge there, which at least we have experienced in our limited world, is just the mindsets. What happens is that digital threatens a lot of old roles in any organization, especially in a B2B. And the resistance today, which hopefully will melt away and people will reskill themselves. But today it's a business, it's a reality. The only challenge is in terms of just a bit of a resistance you face. Certain roles find it, their kind of existence in threat. So,
thank you.
Yeah, sorry, this is the last question. I think you are the first one. You raised the raise. So please go ahead.
Hi, Victor from Mappa India. I have a very simple question. So you want to understand your insights on it. So you meet the customer. Good. So you meet the customer offline. The customer tells you, "I'm ready to pay." The customer tells you his address. You have to make sense of that address. Address can be in many, comes in many forms. How much of business do you lose, or how much of business you are not able to do the way you want to because of a bad quality address? I just thought.
Use Mappa India location tracking. No, but I think it's a genuine question. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll tell you how Domino's works. So basically, every restaurant has its trade zones defined because we need to deliver the 30 minutes guarantee. So those trade zones at the current moment is not Map My India, but it's something which we have created by our own. So because field guys are there who are into restaurants here. Yeah. So far what has been happening is that they have been creating those data sets and providing it to a central system, and from there we do a filtration while we accept an order for a customer. So, but yes, your point is correct that there is a possibility that we are losing it. We have identified also there is but to what percentage is something which I cannot say, but there is a scope, and we are working on a map-based solution also internally to figure out that if we can solve this problem, which can help us improve our business in terms of targeting those areas.
Look, you wanted to add or?
So for us, I think it's been fairly straight and simple. We have store locators. In terms of e-commerce and the shipment model, we purely work on the pin code based approach, which is so familiar, used by everybody in the industry. Never had an instance of an order not being able to reach a customer because of anything related. Obviously, if you don't write your address, it won't reach you. But I think apart from that, I haven't really had an instance. Today's Six Sigma, I would say six-figure grid references are pretty much easy. I think Google has made really life simple. I am a North Indian who lives in Bangalore. So most of the time when you drive, you don't speak the local language. I can't speak any of the 4 South Indian languages. Neither can understand them. So Google is my lifesaver. So I think that's what is good for all of us. There isn't really anything.
Okay. All right. So I think, sorry, I think we'll have to just, wrap it here. But Alok, Mayank and Gokul, thank you very much to be part of the panel. That is definitely, learning experience. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully you found this useful and meaningful in your offline to online journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel members. I request you to please remain on the stage. And if I may invite once again Mr. Siddharth from Tech Process to please present our token of gratitude to all our speakers. I request all our speakers to please remain on the stage for just another minute. Yes, and we request you also for a group photograph. So first we'll hand over the gifts to all our speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, while we're going to take a 10-minute tea break, we're also going to come back for a final session. And we're also going to be announcing the lucky draw winner of MSG 91. So stay tuned, and the scheduled break is for 10 minutes. Thank you.